She never expected that the loudest sound on the happiest day of her life would be the sharp snap of her own hope breaking inside her chest. As the music rose and laughter echoed across the glowing hall, Narine felt the world spinning with joy around her while she stayed frozen, a quiet island in a sea of celebration. Her classmates twirled in elegant gowns, their partners pulling them into dances beneath the golden chandeliers, but she sat in her wheelchair near the far corner, hands resting rigidly in her lap, trying to swallow the feeling that life had left her behind once again. It was supposed to be her moment, her long-awaited victory after years of hospitals, surgeries, loneliness, and fighting her way back into classrooms that sometimes forgot she existed. Instead, it felt like a cruel reminder that even when she achieved something remarkable, she still didn't belong anywhere. If you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, the ripple of love begins with you. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to keep these stories alive. The graduation hall glowed with warm daylight seeping through tall windows, catching tiny flecks of dust that danced in the air like drifting confetti. Everyone looked enchanted, as if the room held a spell meant only for them. Narine kept her gaze low, avoiding the mirrors on the side walls because she knew exactly what they would show. A young woman of 24, her cap slightly crooked, the sleeves of her black gown too long, her blonde hair loosely tied because she couldn't manage tight knots anymore, and a wheelchair that felt heavier today than it ever had. She tried to ignore how no one came to her table, how even the teachers hesitated with polite smiles that never lasted long enough to reach their eyes. For them, she was the inspiring girl who fought against odds. For her classmates, she was someone they applauded but never truly invited into their world. The hall pulsed with joy she could not touch, and a soft ache tightened in her chest. She had imagined walking across this floor one day, maybe not physically walking, but being part of the rhythm. Instead, she watched others dance, spin, laugh, and take pictures that would live forever, while her moments quietly slipped through her fingers like water. On the opposite side of the room, Caden stood with his little daughter, Mira, who clung to his hand with bright curiosity sparkling in her eyes. He didn't plan on staying long. He wasn't here for the ceremony, he was only delivering a forgotten academic file to the university office. But toddlers had a way of pulling people into unexpected places, and Mira had insisted on peeking through the decorated hall the moment she heard music flowing through the corridor. Caden was 31, tall, straightforward, with weary strength in his posture, the weight of single fatherhood resting on his shoulders, yet softened by the gentle patience in his expression. Life hadn't been kind to him either, but he carried his battles quietly, always for his daughter's sake. Mira let go of his hand for just a second, just long enough to take 2 small steps onto the wooden floor and scan the room with innocent wonder. She didn't notice the gowns or the caps. She didn't care about the decorations or the applause. Her attention fixed on one person, the only one who wasn't smiling, the only one who wasn't moving with the music. The young woman in the wheelchair. Children see what adults pretend not to. Caden followed his daughter's gaze and noticed Narine sitting alone. He could tell she was trying to look composed, trying to hide the storm trembling behind her eyes. There was something hauntingly familiar in her stillness, that same quiet ache he knew too well from nights when he felt the world had no space left for him either. Mira tugged at his shirt, whispering something he couldn't quite catch, but he understood enough. She wanted to go to the lonely woman. Narine noticed them approaching and instinctively straightened up, embarrassed at the idea that anyone had seen her struggling to hold herself together. She tried to mask the hurt with a small, practiced smile, but Mira, unfiltered and pure, touched her hand with gentle curiosity as if she sensed a sadness too big for someone so young to carry. The touch startled Narine at first, but then something warm spread across her heart, a soft, unexpected reminder that not everyone saw her chair before they saw her. Caden knelt beside his daughter, apologizing softly with his eyes, unsure if they were intruding. But Narine shook her head, her gaze softening as she took in the little girl's bright energy. The hall around them continued to swirl with celebration, yet for a moment, everything seemed to quiet, like the world had paused to notice a single, delicate thread weaving 2 strangers together. Narine had spent years hiding her vulnerabilities behind strength others praised but rarely understood. She had lost her mobility after a devastating accident at 19, a car crash caused by someone else's reckless decision. The loss had shattered her dreams of becoming a dancer, the passion she had lived for since childhood. The world applauded her academic achievements, but deep inside her, a dancer still cried for the stage she would never step on again. And on this graduation day, surrounded by people who danced freely without understanding the gift they possessed, the wound felt painfully fresh. Mira pointed to the dance floor, urging Narine to come. Narine released a trembling laugh, trying to explain with her eyes that she couldn't, even though her heart longed for it. But Caden understood what his daughter was trying to do, and something within him shifted, a quiet, determined whisper telling him that maybe today wasn't meant to be ordinary, not for her, not for him, not for the woman whose eyes held oceans. Without another second of hesitation, the single father did something no one else had ever dared. Caden stepped behind Narine's wheelchair, placed his strong hands gently on the handles, and nodded to her with a silent question, "May I?" She froze. The entire hall seemed to freeze with her. Her heartbeat pounded loudly in her ears as she processed what was happening. No one had ever offered to take her into the dance. No one had ever paused their world to pull her into their joy. No one had ever seen past the wheels to the young woman who still dreamed of movement. Her eyes shimmered with unspoken yes. Caden guided her slowly toward the dance floor. Mira walked beside them, her tiny fingers trailing the edge of the wheelchair like she was escorting a queen. When they reached the center, the music softened, as if sensing a moment about to unfold. People gradually turned, their expressions shifting from surprise to awe as Caden began moving with gentle rhythm, swaying the wheelchair in slow, graceful arcs across the floor. To Narine, it didn't feel like being pushed. It felt like dancing. Her fingers curled around the armrests, and a wave of emotion surged through her, joy, pain, gratitude, freedom. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes as she realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't watching life pass by. She was part of it. Part of something beautiful. Something she thought she'd lost forever. Caden wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. He wasn't making a show. He simply saw a woman who deserved a moment of magic and gave it to her without hesitation. Mira laughed and clapped as she twirled beside them, tiny curls bouncing like sunshine. People began recording, not out of pity but out of sheer wonder. For the first time, Narine didn't mind. Because this moment was hers, real, raw, and breathtaking. As the dance continued, something inside her healed. Not completely, not instantly, but enough to remind her that broken dreams could find new shapes, new meanings, new spaces to exist. Enough to remind her that even in a life scarred by loss, beauty still found its way in. If this story touched your heart, support it, like, comment, share, and subscribe to keep more emotional journeys alive. Before the final moment arrives, viewers, comment what part of the story made your heart feel something strong today. In the closing stretch of the dance, when the song reached its final soft notes, Narine lifted her gaze toward the sunlight pouring through the high windows. She realized she wasn't alone, not in the way she once believed. People who cared didn't always come from familiar places, sometimes they walked into your life with a child holding their hand and a heart open enough to see your invisible battles. When the dance ended, Caden stepped around to face her, and Mira wrapped her tiny arms around Narine's arm as if declaring the bond officially formed. And in that glowing hall, surrounded by faces now softened with respect and warmth, Narine felt something profound settle inside her chest, an unspoken promise that life still held surprises, still held kindness, still held unexpected beginnings waiting to be embraced. She understood then that hope wasn't something she had lost. It was something that had been waiting to return in the most unexpected form, through the gentle courage of a single father and the fearless innocence of a little girl. And as she breathed in that moment, her heart finally felt free enough to fly again.